With the end of the summer travel season, gas prices should have decreased, but that's not happening this fall as prices continue to climb amid a spike in oil costs. As the 4th of July weekend approaches, the Governor's Office of Highway Safety wants to caution all drivers against driving while impaired. The state has a zero-tolerance policy against drunk driving, and if you are caught driving while under the influence, you will be arrested. September 11th is a day that will never be forgotten, as it marks one of the most heinous attacks on the United States. But it's with those events that bring the country together every year to honor those that will never be forgotten. Hollywood has come to Valdosta as parts of the film Bandit were filmed in the downtown area. Specifically, some scenes were filmed in the historic courthouse, and several locals were cast as extras in the film. The 9/11 attacks on the United States led to the country being a constant military presence in Afghanistan for the last 20 years. The decision to pull U.S. troops from Afghanistan led to a chaotic withdrawal as the United States tried to safely evacuate its military personnel.
You know, we built a huge bureaucracy, Homeland Security. We expanded our national security state immensely. We've spent huge sums on military intelligence, wars in Afghanistan as well as Iraq. And so I think there's a question for the public of, did we over-respond? Did we extend ourselves too widely in the international sphere? And did we maybe spend too much on our own domestic surveillance and our own domestic bureaucracy? I think those are questions that we're going to continue to wrestle with, even in 2021.
President Biden's decision to pull military support from the region has been met with criticism as the world watched as the government was taken over by the Taliban, the terrorist organization who claimed responsibility for the 9/11 attacks in a matter of days.
If the military is not willing to fight for themselves, if the government cannot become legitimate and purge themselves of corruption, it is a never-ending commitment by the United States in terms of nation building. And my heart breaks. My heart breaks for what will happen to women in that nation, what will happen to young girls in that nation. There are many across the globe who feel like the United States has betrayed those people. But in the end, if you ask most Americans, were you willing to stay there another 10 years, another 20 years, another 30 years? Most Americans would say, well, the strategic interests of the United States, it's probably not there, right? The strategic interests are not that critical for us to stay there for 20 years where we continue to have to prop up the government, spend incredible sums of money to try to maintain their own military, when in the end, always realizing that if at any point we leave, it's going to fold like a house of cards.
With the Taliban taking control of the government, there are questions on what continued relations between the United States and the Afghan government will look like.
If this is the Taliban pre-9/11 that's executing people in the streets, that is prohibiting women and young girls from attending schools or being in the workplace, we're probably not going to see dynamic relations with the Taliban. China has already entered this arena. They've pledged, I think, something like $30 million to the Taliban government in terms of emergency aid. So China is stepping into the power vacuum that we're leaving behind. If this is a more moderate, and that's a big if this is a more moderate Taliban, there are probably opportunities for us to establish diplomatic relations with them. If this is still very much the old Taliban, like we saw pre-9/11, I would not expect much more than very icy relations between the United States and the Taliban government.
The city of Valdosta is facing a string of violent crimes, with multiple shootings and murders occurring all over the city. The last one happened just this past week. Despite the recent increase in crimes, such as shootings and murders, the Valdosta Police Department tell me that the overall crime rates are down.
They're one-time incidents. It's not really something that the general public would have to be super concerned about. These are people that are known. They've targeted someone else. It could be a beef, it could be a drug deal gone bad, it could be gang related. So these people know who they're going after. So they're pretty much isolated incidents.
Residents of the city are concerned with the increase of violent crimes they say have struck the city.
I mean, it's definitely been concerning. Over the last couple of weeks, we've definitely seen, this massive increase in crime, or at least appears to be a massive increase in crime. And that is, it's a concerning thing that it's not just kind of petty crime, right? It's massive crime.
With more and more businesses opening back up after the pandemic, officers hope that crime rates will remain low and the number for violent crimes will decrease.
Back in 2020, we had almost 70-something thousand calls for service, and it was just really, really busy. The anxiety brought on by the pandemic, everybody didn't know what was going on. Everything was brand new. Everybody's staying at home. No one's getting out. Businesses are closed. You have a lot of stress. You have a lot of anxiety from folks. That causes friction, and a lot of the calls were resultant from that.
Data has shown that while there is an increase in serious crime, rates for crimes like burglary and theft have decreased. Chief Leslie Manahan attributes this decrease to the COVID-19 pandemic and stay-at-home orders. I'm Cyle Clark, reporting for News Valdosta. Cars were lining up as the first appointment took place at 9 a.m.
Well, we've had a lot of people calling in to our call center asking for the Janssen vaccine. So we knew that there was a demand for that particular vaccine in itself. And then we also know that people prefer a drive-through method if at all possible.
There were a steady stream of cars throughout the duration of the clinic. Cars were told to have ID and insurance cards at the ready to make the process as smooth as possible.
We just encourage people to make sure that they're really researching the vaccine. We hear a lot of people that are waiting to get it to see how it affects others. And we just encourage you to look into it and research it. There are side effects with any vaccine that you get.
Lowndes County has received 1,600 doses of the Janssen vaccine, commonly known as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Unlike Moderna and Pfizer, the Johnson vaccine is a single-dose shot and nearly 100% effective at treating the most severe cases of COVID-19.
I was just telling you, we're also doing mobile clinics, particularly among the African-American faith-based community because of the hesitancy within the African-American community. We have partnered with a lot of different ministers and with the National Pan-Hellenic Council, in our area, to ensure that education is getting to all of our communities and making sure that anyone that wants the vaccine, that they can get it where they're comfortable at.
The overall process took no longer than 45 minutes, and that includes the mandatory 15-minute observation period.